Welcome back. This is episode 5 of Will You Walk With Me? And I'm so excited today because we are going to have guests. Andrew and Catherine, my producers, are going to be guests in our time together. But before we get started and welcome them, let me check in. How are you today? What do you bring to this time together? I know it's been a while since we last got together, so let's take a moment to think about our last walk that we took. We talked about mindfulness. Mindfulness, which has to do with examining who we are and cultivating appreciation for the fullness of each precious moment in which we are alive. Most of all, it has to do with being present, recognizing and being more in touch with the depths of your mind and your heart, and being in a place of peace and kindness in a sometimes crazy and painful world. Take a breath in. Let it out. Take a moment to appreciate yourself. You are special. You are a child of God, made in God's image, and loved by God, just the way you are. Take one more breath in and let it out. Today's walk is going to focus on purpose and the support of community, that very important support. A few weeks ago, I found myself listening to NPR, National Public Radio. There was a very interesting story about children in a middle school in Massachusetts. There are many studies out now on the impact of the pandemic isolation on children in different age cohorts. These particular children, who are now in Brown Middle School, were in the 4th grade in 2020 when the country went into lockdown. Their ability to carry on with their academics through Zoom was truly a gift from God, in my opinion. But there's no denying that the lack of learning in person created deficits in social learning and interaction. In this school, they focus on creative ways to bring purpose and life skills to the educational process. Each day, for example, 8th graders take charge of the school announcements for students and staff alike. They determine the order of announcements and how to weave the school's new motto, "Let go and move on," into the culture of the entire school family. School principal Kim Lysick said in an interview that bumps in life are inevitable. And these middle school students are children who are beginning to look at the challenges and opportunities of adulthood. Principal Lysick sees that some children tend to hold on to things that make them angry or embarrassed, and they can't move forward either academically or socially. She tells them tomorrow is a new day with new opportunities. When situations happen, children are brought together and they talk things out. That is part of the purpose of building relationships, because relationships aren't easy to build, and they are fluid and they are confusing at times. Giving the opportunity to create and lead in adult activities, along with a focus on bringing students together to talk openly about life challenges in a safe environment, gives them intentional activities that help develop self-confidence and compassion for themselves and others. Is this focus on relationships and owning the creative process something only children can participate in? Is this a need that was only brought on because of the pandemic? For me, of course, the answer to both questions is no. I think that no matter what age you are, we all have the need to step out of our comfort zones and reach out to another person. Also, I think the pandemic isolation just shined a bright light on an already existing challenge. In our last walk together, we looked at a more solitary practice, mindfulness, even though I have practiced mindfulness in groups before. But in this walk, we will focus more directly on community. In Galatians 6, 2 through 3, the Apostle Paul writes, Live creatively, friends. If someone falls into sin, forgivingly restore him, saving your critical comments for yourself. You might be needing forgiveness yourself before the day is out. Stoop down and reach out to those who are oppressed. Share their burdens and complete Christ's law. That was taken from the Message translation. Brown Middle School is intentionally working at creating an environment which helps take their students to a higher level in social activities and relationship building. But what about for adults? What opportunities are there for us? Today, we're going to take a look at something very creative that focuses on relationships, among other things. It is the playing of role-playing games, or RPGs. To be honest, until the last month or so, I never knew too much about this world. I knew that Andrew and Catherine, my producers, were very involved in RPGs. And it is because they started a podcast of their own called Legends, Loot, and Lure that we have the opportunity to make the podcast walks that we offer. Andrew and Catherine are members of my church family, and they came to me with the idea of offering a podcast almost a year ago. They donate their time and equipment for each episode, and we are very blessed by their ministry. Probably the most famous RPG is Dungeons & Dragons. It was very popular in the 70s and 80s and is making a comeback as evidenced and being offered in schools as part of after-school club activities. D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, is not the only RPG out there. There are many others, both secular and Christian. One of the most popular Christian ones is called the Holy Lands. To be honest, I haven't ever participated in an RPG. I want to at some point, just to have the experience. But what interested me for now is not so much the technicalities of playing the game, but the significant amount of research surrounding RPGs as part of therapy in community. Please remember that as we continue our walk today, RPGs or any other practice that we might share is not a substitute for a journey with a licensed therapist, but can definitely complement your process. I'm going to give you a little background, and then we will talk with Andrew and Catherine and invite them to share their story. My research led me to several articles and a really cool book called Tabletop Role-Playing Therapy, A Guide for Clinician Game Masters by Megan A. McConnell. The Family Therapy Health Network highlights the fact that most diagnosed and undiagnosed mental health disorders have in common a way that they hijack a person's ability to experience joy, playing, or simply being with others. While focus on children with this challenge is very high in these years since the pandemic isolation, we can't forget that there are many adults suffering as well. Through play, people can safely explore challenges, challenge their thoughts and beliefs, and work on creative solutions. What is a growing field of study is the impact on negotiators who are preparing for major negotiation sessions. They focus on role-playing activities where they not only play their own role or character, we'll talk about that later, but also take turns in playing the parts of the counter-negotiator so that they have a clear understanding of the thoughts, interests, and needs of the other person. This focused opportunity is used in business, critical peace talks, life or death hostage negotiations, as well as planning for military actions. Role play helps us to define relationships within ourselves and others. It requires imagination, impulse control, frustration tolerance, cognitive adaptability, and it offers the individual a place to work on parts of their lives in a supportive community environment. The Family Therapy Health Network actually created their own RPG and called it Legends of Lorem. Susan Harriman from the University of Chicago at Loyola says that the potential for dramatic rehearsal and civic outcomes in tabletop RPGs describes some of the opportunities that RPGs offer. She writes that the adjective of tabletop comes from the fact that these games intend for a group of people to gather together around a table and play together collaboratively and synchronously while sharing that space. Aaron Hollander defines tabletop RPGs primarily as group storytelling, with each player responsible for the actions of a character of their own design. Everyone responds to and with narrated action to the effects of the decisions that are made through a flexible system of rules and probability mechanisms. Players take responsibility for acting these roles out within a narrative through either literal acting or through a process of structured decision-making regarding character development. Actions taken within games succeed or fail according to a formal system of rules and guidelines. While they take any number of permeations, the game with the largest cultural footprint is D&D. However, D&D is only one game amongst a multitude. Not all have a fantasy setting or focus on combat. Not all tabletop RPGs require a 20-sided die, or any die at all. And there are as many settings and subject matters as there are genres of any art form. Hollander says that tabletop RPGs are rooted in a focus on unrehearsed and unrepeatable narratives through a collaborative improvisational storytelling narrative, and that they are distinguished by their participatory quality, not only in the imaginative buy-in of the audience, but in their very existence being generated primarily for the benefit of those taking part. So it brings me great joy to welcome to you my friends, my parishioners, and my, especially in this context, producers, Andrew and Catherine. Hi there.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to have you here. And
It's great to be here.
yay. And I want to keep digging into this. So like I've done the research on, obviously there's more research to be done, but I've read a lot. I've looked at different books and articles, but now I want to hear from your heart. I want to get right in behind the scenes on how all of this works.
I'll try not to geek out too much, but
Well, geek out a little.
okay, a little.
All right, so I just gave this big discussion here about some of the research. Did I do a good job?
I think it's I think you did a great job. There's so much benefit, I think, to role playing games, and it's really just like how this podcast is doing it. Mm-hmm. They're really just starting to scratch the surface of what the therapeutic benefits are of role playing in general. It doesn't have to be D&D. It could be literally anything. But the research into it is really just in its infancy still. This is probably one of the first books out there about the topic. So they're really just starting to get a handle on what the actual therapeutic benefits are to encountering scenarios in a role playing environment.
Do you think that there is an age range? Now, I mentioned in my children's high school, this is part of the after school program, one of the opportunities. How young do you think you could be to start any type of role playing game?
Well, you're going to say something, Darren?
I was going to say, I think you only have to be old enough to understand the rules to some extent, right?
Yeah, I mean, they make like D&D for little kids without all the complex rules and everything, with just some of the basic concepts. I mean, kids know how to role play. Like, I mean, they play dress up and pretend to be people all the time. So it's not a far-fetched thing, I think, for them. I think it's harder for adults to get into that kind of environment. But one of the people we interviewed on the podcast, Ryan McLaughlin, I mean, he does it in middle school, for therapeutic reasons, for purposes. So I don't think there's I don't think there's any age limitation. It's just what the therapeutic benefits of that may be. Maybe middle school. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a therapist, so it's
None
really,
of us here are.
Yeah, I was just say. So it's hard for me to say, but he's definitely had some great experience using D&D in a middle school environment as kind of a therapeutic resource.
So on the other side, have you had any experience with playing this game with someone who is a senior citizen?
That's a good question. I mean, it's so D&D got its start in 1973. So there probably are senior citizens that are playing D&D at this point.
Right.
Would be my guess. I've never had the honor to play with someone in that demographic, but I'm sure there are.
And so I ask about kids first because I'm really captivated by the work that the Brown Middle School is doing. But in terms of an older person, they would bring more life experience to the game. Am I right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would affect character development and all the other aspects of the game. So it actually might be a really interesting experience if the person is able to let go and become part of the process, to have them be a part of any particular group activity with this game.
Right. Yeah. It's that role playing concept that I don't say a lot of people, but some people definitely struggle with. I mean, because you're playing, you have to think like your character and act like your character. So it's sometimes that can be the biggest hurdle to come over. So while people even of our generation have more experience, sometimes we're further away from those kids who are used to playing. So sometimes it's hard to jump over that hurdle. So, and there's, with all that life experience, just becomes more trauma and other things to deal with. So there's a lot more to unpack over time as you get older.
And yet, I think we attended PAX Unplugged in December of last year. And I mean, you had a really wide range of age groups there. So there certainly are. Oh, so PAX Unplugged, Reverend Kathy is looking at me like, what is PAX Unplugged? PAX Unplugged is a giant, it's board games, RPG games convention. So they had, a panel about Critical Role, which is a pretty well-known now group that plays D&D online, and you can watch them on YouTube and all sorts of stuff.
Twitch and YouTube.
Yeah. And they had D&D panels, and they had games all over the place and showing you how to play different games. And I mean, it was a huge event. There were tables and tables and tables of people just playing RPGs and doing what they call one-shots, which are pretty short RPG games, so you can get them done in one sitting. And I feel like there was a really wide range of ages there.
Sure. There were.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Probably fewer kids than I'm accustomed to seeing at a convention, but I would say a lot more older people than I would have anticipated.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Okay. So.
Yes.
How did you both get started?
It was May.
Yeah.
So, so I had a friend that was a former coworker. We became friends. After I had left that company, we were both doing our own thing. One day he said to me, he goes, "Would you have any interest in playing Dungeons and Dragons?" And so for me, my experience with Dungeons and Dragons was growing up. I knew people who said they played the game. I'd never seen the game played before. I understood kind of the concept of it. I knew it was a role-playing game and that kind of thing. So it's always something that I was kind of aware of and always curious about, but never had the opportunity. No one ever invited me to play before. So this was in, I want to say like 2017.
Yeah.
probably about 2017, and he was like, would you be interested in playing? And I'm like, sure, I'd love to play. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'd love to try. So that's how it started, and we sat down, went through. He gave me the basic rule book, so I started reading the rules to understand how the game was played. Created my first character, and all that kind of fun stuff. But that's how it entered into our lives. And then Catherine, you can tell.
Yeah. So the friend who brought Andrew into it, who has become a good friend of both of us, wanted to try playing instead of being the DM, the dungeon master. So he wanted to do a character so that he could role play. And he asked if I would be interested in DMing. And honestly, I was not, but I love these people. So I did it. And I really didn't enjoy that part of it. But I am now playing in a game that we do for the podcast. And I am playing a character rather than being the dungeon master. And I actually love it. So,
what's your character's name?
Zanros Bemblebomble.
Yes.
Could you slow that down, please?
that's Zanros Bemblebomble. She is a rock gnome, and her goal in life is to open a bed and breakfast, the Bemblebomble B&B.
I love it. I love it.
And that's part of, I think, the beauty of the game, right? Like, Andrew and our friend Joe created the character for the podcast, and then Joe was going to play Zanros, but stepped away from being able to do it because he's getting married, so he's very busy right now.
Okay.
So I took over, and all I had was, this is the character, here are her general traits. And as we were going through what they call a session 0, where you sort of build out, like, what are your character's motivations? What are they going to do? How is this going to play out? I said, wouldn't it be funny if she wanted to open a B&B because her name is Bemblebomble? And it has grown into a whole thing. Like, her sole purpose in life now is to get enough gold to open her bed and breakfast.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. I think I'm going to skip a couple of questions here and go to this one.
All right.
Okay. So if I have it right, Game Master or Dungeon Master in the D&D case sets up the big picture of the story.
Yep.
Story of the game. And then participants choose characters.
Mm-hmm.
What goes into setting up a character? And can someone have more than one character?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So typically in an adventure, one person plays one character. That's it. It's kind of
unless something happens to their character and then they
but
can be another character.
But at a time.
But at a time, yes.
They're playing one character at a time. There is the potential for character death, just as in real life. So there are real life stakes, there that your character could die. But when you create a character, there's a couple base things that you create. One is they're changing the term. What's been known as race in D&D. You pick a race. So are you a human? Are you an elf? That type of thing. They're changing it to call it species to be more inclusive, but basically, who are you? Like what type of character are you? Race and then class. So I'm gonna bring this up on my screen so I can go through this. So there are 12 classes, and this helps define kind of who you are as well. Are you a barbarian? Are you a big aggressive fighter? Are you a druid? Are you more tapped into nature? Are you a cleric? Someone that heals? Are you a healer? You could be a sorcerer or a wizard, casting spells. So there's all sorts of different classes that you can choose from. So those are race, class, and then you can choose your background from there. Those are some of the key building blocks to a character. kind of how you want them to be. Like I've built a human wizard. There are like I said, I'm going to geek out a little bit. So there's all sorts of races in D&D. I've played a feline, and what is known as a tabaxi. That's the race in D&D. But you can, I mean, there are vampires. There's lizard folk. There's dragonborn. There's all sorts of things you can be. So you can be almost anything you could possibly want to be, who is not yourself. And there are a lot of inherent traits to each race. So a lot of the times, again, some are more nature based. So again, depending on what kind of character you want to create, it could be someone very much like you. You know, you can put a lot of yourself into the character. You can also, if you want to create the character similar to a fictional hero or something like that, you can do that as well. So there's all sorts of ways of building the character, but race, class, and kind of background are some of the basic building blocks.
Okay.
There's way more than that, but that's the
no, I get it.
That's the basic.
Sorry.
No, that's good. I mean, we'd be here all night.
I know.
Kind of a thing if we went into the whole depth of it.
We spent multiple episodes on our podcast about going into this. So yeah, you could really talk well into the night on that.
Legends, loot, and lore. If you want to learn more about the technical stuff about the game.
Yes.
And the whole idea of it is that it's for beginners. So it really is a great way to start if
Yeah.
you're looking to get involved in the game.
We start with the ABCs of D&D, go through a lot of the basic terminology, and then we literally walk through building a character. We walk through the basic races, the basic classes, etc. So you could literally listen through the episodes and build a character as you go.
Excellent. How many people are involved in your particular game?
There's
That you
four
are-
of us.
So for the podcast, there's four of us. There's me as the DM,
Right.
the dungeon master, and we have three characters that play.
And okay, so there's the four of you. If, say, I wanted to join your game,
Sure.
could I join it now, or do I have to wait till you end?
Nope,
no.
absolutely. You can. It's interesting. So I play in multiple games. And for example, our Wednesday night game, not everybody can make it every night. So it's just a question of who can show up, and then whoever can play that night kind of plays together. And the DM will sometimes play the people who are absent. He'll play their characters for them. So if there's a battle or something and they've got to fight, he can roll the dice for them on their behalf. So people come, people go. Some people move on and say, I can't play anymore. Like Joe got engaged and is getting married. So his time is focused elsewhere. So other people can jump in and add a character to the party. And that's part of the fun of it. Then the DM and the new person kind of create the story. Well, how does this person meet the rest of the party?
Yep.
So you work together to tie all that in. So people can join all the time.
Yeah, when I decided that I didn't want to DM our campaign anymore, Joe said he would take over. And first he took the character that he was playing and had him ride off to single-handedly battle the vampire that was the bad guy in this particular story. And when his character rode off, it freed him to step into the DM seat again. So, yeah, I mean, it's part of the creativity of the game is that really it's as flexible as you want it to be.
It's highly flexible, yeah.
If you can, give me a short synopsis of a particular campaign. Not necessarily like what's the thing that the DM presents to you.
So before we jump into that, I'll preface it by saying this. So there's really two ways for a DM to start a campaign. the producers, the company which at the moment is Hasbro, that owns the company that creates all the D&D content.
Oh, Hasbro.
Yeah. They create a lot of books. They publish a lot of like pre-built adventures. So you could pull a book off the shelf and run an adventure that way. So you're given the kind of the whole story, the plot line, and then the characters play within that environment. There's also what is known as homebrew, which is the DM makes up their own story. They create the entire world themselves. So they create anything that's not a player character. They create. All the other people you interact with, the storyline, everything is their own imagination.
Is it all like medieval stuff?
No, not at all. Some of it's in. You can be in space. You can be
little Star Trek thing going on here.
Yeah,
there is a Star Trek version of
really
of like D&D. Yeah, absolutely.
NASA released their own
NASA
campaign.
released their own campaign. Yep.
Oh my God!
Bunch of NASA scientists. What is it? The dragon steals the Hubble telescope.
Yeah, a dragon steals the Hubble telescope, and you got to go rescue it.
Yeah, so a bunch of scientists figure out what's going on, and yeah.
Wow.
We're just blowing your mind, aren't we?
Yes. That was not in my reading. I didn't see that in the book.
I feel like our next door neighbor plays with a group in their high school, and I feel like their plots are very romance driven, which you wouldn't really think about for D&D, but that is part of it as well.
Okay.
So it really, like I said, can be as flexible as you want it to be, can be as wide as your imagination, really.
100%. There is. I DM'd for a little while. There was a whole campaign from Dungeons and Dragons called Strixhaven, which was which was all based in a University of Magic.
So like Harry Potter thing?
Yeah, like an adult Harry Potter.
Like Harry Potter goes to college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
I love that movie.
But magic.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's really anything that part of the reason that when I was DMing that Joe chose the campaign that he did was because it was vampires, and I love vampires. Like that's just my thing. And
because you love Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I do love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And he thought that would be great. What we didn't know at the time, and this is another piece of it, is that some of the books are way more structured than others. Okay. So the book that he had been using previously was very structured. It said, you do this, you do this, you do this. Strahd was all over the place, which was Curse of Strahd is the vampire one. So it was really difficult for me as somebody who had really never played before to understand what I was doing on any given day.
Right.
So I was learning, the mechanics of the game, the rules of the game, and then also trying to have enough completed for the group to have something to do every time we played. It was a tough one. So I think that's a piece of it too. Like, how much of it do you want to use your creativity, and how much would you like them to lay out as much as you can? Although you're always going to get thrown curveballs because your party never does what you think they're going to do.
They don't.
And I mean, that happens within the party itself too, which is an interesting piece of it. When we play for the podcast, we play with a good friend of ours and our next door neighbor. And James goes off the rails sometimes. Yeah. And even I am like, dude, what are we doing? That's not what we just talked about before we got
But he's being creative.
Exactly. But he's frequently just like wreaking havoc.
And that's when we talk about this as a therapeutic resource, that's the thing. I mean, you have there's so much that you have to think about because you have a party of people that are very independently minded. You need to act together. You need to work together to solve a problem, but you've got potentially no idea what the other people are going to do in your party. So you've got to be able to. It's very interesting to see how people react to situations because I've had situations where. Like this one guy, for example, so we were just in a campaign in a game the other night, and like a dragon. I play a dwarf, so I'm a very short character. I'm a soldier, so I've been in the war. Catherine's holding up a little character, something like that. So anyway, this dragon like comes up to me and was like, "You look delicious," because I'm very tall, I'm very tiny, and I look like food. So I took my weapon and like hit the dragon on the nose, which like everybody else was like, bad idea. But it's exactly what my character would have done, because my character doesn't like is very like if somebody attacks him, he's gonna step up to it. So it's very interesting, because literally you should have seen the reaction of everybody else. They were just like, wait, why did you do that? Like, we're all gonna die, and that's not what happened.
Yeah.
The dragon kind of just like took a step back and was like, oh, okay. Like,
so you stood up to the dragon.
Yeah, exactly.
You stood up to the dragon. And that's a very interesting point.
Yes.
As we look at, I mean, we talk all night as you try to explain to me all the intricate details of the game. When you build your characters, do you at all take into account things that you might want to work on, quote unquote, work on in your life, that you could use this as a testing ground? You know, you just stood up to the big bad bully. Not asking you particularly if this is something you want to work on in your life, but if someone is having issues with standing up for themselves, could they use this game as a testing ground to learn how to do it?
100%.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Can you talk about that?
I mean, I can talk about it from the perspective of Zanros Bemblebomble. I mean, it was a character that was handed to me, but I've infused a lot of myself into her because I saw pieces of that. But I think the place where she's really great for me is that I am able to be tough and to kind of forge ahead no matter what. And those are the things where people talk a lot about imposter syndrome, right? And when you go into the workplace, you know, you feel like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, am I good enough to do this? And Zanros, as a character, has no doubt in what she wants to do. She's of noble birth, but she wants to branch out from her family and open this bed and breakfast on her own. And it's that single-minded toughness that I think I sort of take when I go into the office and try to shake off that imposter syndrome and go, yeah, I'm good enough to do this. Wow. I can, you know, obviously, like, I know what I'm doing. And Zanros can be a little bit of a rage monster sometimes, but it's great for me because it lets me kind of blow off steam in a way that I certainly can't in an office environment.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Especially an office environment where I've been described as bubbly and sweet. So I really can't go in there and yell at people.
But you can hear.
As Zanros, absolutely. She has her own voice and everything. Like, I do a voice. She sometimes gets really mad, and she is not afraid to stand up for herself in ways where sometimes I'm in the office and, you know, you have that moment where you're like, I don't know this person. It's awkward to reach out to them. Like, it kind of gives me a little bit of that, like, well, I have to, so let's do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, the characters, and even like my character in my Monday night game, Thoradin, the dwarf, he is, I'm trying to remember, he's like 150 years old. He's been around the block, and he's seen a lot of stuff in his life. And like I use that kind of, I think of a little bit of like Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. I'm getting too old for this.
Oh man, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but for me, I can say and do things as Thoradin that I'm not comfortable maybe doing or wasn't comfortable doing in, let's say, a work environment, standing up to a bully. You know, it's I may have even done that differently through all my therapy and everything else. Even in the game, I may not have done that the same way a year or so ago.
Right.
So it's a way for me to stand up to a bully and say, hey, I'm not going to take that and see what happens. Because maybe if I were a lesser character, I would have just kind of demurred to the dragon and been like, oh no, like I'll just back away, but I don't want to be that. I want to be able to stand up for myself and say, no, this is, if you're going to come at me, I'm going to stand my ground. So it's been a very interesting experience kind of being able to play that out in role playing. And I think it's helped me more so in my life, just being able to be that kind of person that stands up for himself and is a little more assertive than I might be otherwise.
So that's a wonderful, and I'm as I'm watching them talk, so you can't see this because it's a podcast. Their eyes light up when they talk about this. Mm-hmm. There is a joy on their face. It's interesting as a person who has no direct experience with this other than from a research perspective. Mm-hmm. I see that there is something in their lives through this game that is transformative for them. Mm-hmm. And probably for many others, because there are lots and lots and lots and lots of people who play this game. And when I think of the concept of transformation, Paul talks about it in being transformed by the word. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yes, we are called to that. But then from that particular transformation process, how does that branch out into other aspects? I think the Lord just provides so many opportunities mm-hmm. for us to experience that transformative power and presence, this being one of them. And that's always a reason, to be grateful. The community. What happens if somebody just isn't playing nice? Now, I don't mean that their character, if their character is not supposed to be nice, that's one thing. But if it doesn't fit, have you ever had that experience? Because when you're dealing in community, things happen. Experiences happen to people that change them. You may have welcomed somebody new into the group and it's like, oh God, we don't know what we were thinking of here. Have you ever had that experience?
Maybe.
He is smiling. There is a story here somewhere.
Do you want to tell that story?
You don't have to name names.
I know of a story as well.
No, so it's interesting because there was another person that I had interviewed on Legends, Loot, and Lore who does that integrates D&D into the workplace environment, and dealing with a difficult employee or a difficult coworker, similar situation. You have a difficult party member. There are all sorts of ways to deal with that. The DM is kind of the manager of the team, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He's the one running the table. So there's all sorts of things. The table. I don't want to sound too weird about this, but the table is a sacred space. It needs to be a safe place for everybody, because when you role play, you need to be comfortable mm-hmm. with the people that you're around. You need to feel comfortable to be able to do that. For Catherine to be able to do a voice and all that, you've got to feel comfortable at that table to be able to do those types of things. So if you have somebody that's in that group that's making others feel uncomfortable or may just be taking over, they maybe you've got a party member that just likes to kill everybody that you encounter. Mm-hmm. There's different things like that. The DM needs to make sure that the game is fun for everybody. So sometimes it may be talking to that person, like the DM talking to the person, being like, hey, I've gotten this feedback from other people at the table. So it's a great opportunity to to deal with kind of conflict resolution. But you want to make sure that as a DM, you're making it a safe space for everybody. Because everybody, again, you've got people of different backgrounds, different genders, different ethnicities. You've got all these different things that come to the table, and everybody needs to feel like they're contributing and being accepted at that table. So if you've got someone that is making that difficult or making somebody feel uncomfortable, you definitely need to address it. But it's a great opportunity to talk to your DM to be like, hey, like I'm not feeling so good right now, because something else is happening. So, and then the DM can just kill off that character, or no, I'm just kidding. And he falls off a cliff. Oops.
So the DM could do that. The DM could say, "This is what's going to happen to you, nasty person," or.
Oh no, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say, again, you deal with it as, usually everybody is our friends, for the most part. But the one of the DM's jobs is to make the table a safe space for everybody. So if somebody doesn't feel that way, then you need to address it. And either talking to that person and they change their behavior, or maybe just asking that person to leave the table. Maybe this is not the right table for them.
Okay.
So you can definitely ask, just like how you have a group of friends. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to, distance yourself from somebody if they're a negative influence in your life or something like that. You may want to separate yourselves from them. Same thing at a D&D table. If somebody is causing problems, you need to address it and move forward likewise. Was that I felt that was like a long-winded answer to that. Wow, sorry.
No, but it's a very important topic because there's the whole concept. I mean, I know just from being in business, where you'd be in a sales meeting and you have to do role playing. And straight up, I have a minor in theater. Okay, so acting in and of itself is part of me, but role playing is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It's not acting. Yes, you might create a character, but there's something in the concept of role playing that, to me, requires safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the boardroom or the dining room, as we're all sitting in their dining room, by the way. Yes. So safety is so I'm glad you took the time to have that answer. And I know as we're coming to a close here, if you feel comfortable and safe, how has your role-playing experience in D&D helped? So by the way, before I continue this question, we are all big proponents of therapy, working with a licensed therapist.
100%.
So has the D&D experience helped you in your therapeutic journey? And spiritual journey. I mean, and we're all parishioners in the same church together. Mm-hmm. So is there a connection going even deeper than what we've discussed to point on how this game affects you in these other aspects of your life to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things that I've been working on in therapy for years is being my authentic self. Just being able to be myself without feeling uncomfortable. And I think over the years, he's tried to get me to role play on multiple occasions, and I was never comfortable doing that. Despite the fact that I trust my therapist, I've been seeing him for years and years now. It's probably 15 years. I mean, it's been a long time. And I think D&D has certainly broken me out of that shell because, we don't have the most listeners ever, but we just hit 7,500 downloads.
Yes.
That's awesome.
A lot of people are listening to me do a stupid voice on a monthly basis.
That is awesome.
And, it's something that I think I would have shied away from in the past. And I think that's just another step toward becoming that authentic self, or really like being able to embrace that authentic self.
That is powerful. Thanks be to God. Amen. Amen.
I think you've made one really good point, which is something I want to
Just the one.
I knew that was coming.
I love you, dear.
I love you too.
No, the one thing that people find a lot easier about role playing in something like an RPG, such as D&D, is that it isn't yourself.
Right.
So you're playing a character. So it's not you. It may be you. You know, there may be aspects of you. I mean, you obviously embody your character, but it's not you. Again, I'm a 3.5-foot dwarf. Like,
Yeah, I'm 3'5". I'm a rock gnome. I weigh
Right.
29 pounds.
right, exactly. Like I'm 150 years old. Like, it's and somehow that makes sense. But it's interesting. I think my journey in therapy and my journey through D&D have kind of played off of each other. Like I went through a lot in 2023 and learned a tremendous amount in therapy, and I feel like I'm able to use that in D&D. But I also feel like I feel like D&D augments what I've learned in therapy. I can kind of play it out. So the concepts that I'm working on and learning in therapy, I can kind of play out in a safe environment in D&D before I try them in real life. So my character can do something that I've been working on in therapy, and it's much safer to do it that way than to try to do it in front of an actual person. You know, either in relationships, in friendships, or at work, whatever that may be. I think it gives you a really safe space to try those things out and see how other people react and see what happens when you do those things. So I think there's a lot of benefit for me to playing D&D alongside my therapy. And spiritually, you know, I'm always fascinated by there are a lot of characters that have classes and things like that have very spiritual aspects to them. You know, whether they like
I'm a monk.
you're a monk, so
The one who wants to build the bed and breakfast is a monk.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, got it.
AKA a martial artist.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah.
You are talented.
Yeah.
But you know, it's
Zanros is a cool character.
yeah. You know, it's really interesting because I think that there is it's that same hero's journey. You know, like I feel like a lot of the characters that you play and things like that, these stories just tell themselves over and over again. So a lot of things that happen in the Bible, like the David and Goliath, you know, which is a very common story. So it's a way to kind of almost deepen the meaning to those stories and those experiences that have happened in the Bible that you've read about. You can almost kind of play them out in a different environment, so to speak.
Wow.
So some of that, and it's like, you know, you pray to the moon god, but I mean, it's like, I mean, there's all sorts of different deities and things in Dungeons and Dragons and all that, but you bring a lot of yourself to that. So I think a lot of it, your spiritual journey ties into kind of your hero's journey in D&D. You know, you'll learn a lot as time goes on, and hopefully can apply that to real life.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk about with my therapist a lot is the idea of, so I struggle with my weight. And one of the things we've talked about is 12-step programs like Overeaters Anonymous. And, you know, that idea of a higher power and the fact that higher power is somewhere within you. So it's not just some amorphous thing. It's how you relate to whatever that higher power is. You know, in my case, it would be God, but in another person's case, it might be something else. It might be a relative who's passed who they, you know, feel very connected to. It's that thing that you reach outside of yourself to get. And I think there's something about about role playing that allows you to connect with that otherness.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not a 3'5" rock gnome monk, but you know,
Wait, you're not? Who did I marry?
I know. Just finding out now. But, you know, it allows me to be something I'm not, which allows me to connect with things in a different way so that when I struggle to find that higher power, it kind of helps me find a different way to look at things. To say like, oh, okay, this is how I can connect with God through my creativity, through my, you know, just like finding that, you know, Zanros is very frustrated by all of the obstacles that she's facing in this campaign. And, you know, I think I feel the same way in life a lot of the time, right? Like everything's an obstacle. Nothing is easy. And it helps to connect to that. And then, you know, where are you asking for help from? When things get really tough for me, what am I asking for help? I'm asking God for help. So it's funny the way it just kind of like ties right back into your life every day.
That's amazing. And Jesus faced so many frustrations.
Absolutely.
I think that Christians don't spend enough time, I don't want to say role playing because that's not the right word, but really digging into the fact of how Jesus was frustrated. I sometimes think that he went to the cross and one of the fears was, oh my God, was this all worth it?
Right.
Was this, do they get the message? Not enough people get the message. Was this worth it? And that's a huge burden that he took for us because he loves us. And I think as we, well, I got one final question, but as we bring this to a close,
Yes.
When we look at the love that God has for us, and God invites us into creativity, and that's what captivates me about all of this. At this point, from a research perspective, creativity is how we can open ourselves up to a deeper experience of God. Whether it be this, whether it be painting, whether it be music. I mean, there's countless amounts of things that are out there. We're focusing on this tonight, but they are all opportunities to come closer into our own being, to appreciate that we are the blessed children of God, and then to reach deeper and further and reach our arms out wider to receive God into our lives. So you guys have been awesome tonight. This has been so wonderful for me. I hope you had a good time too.
Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's I mean, we do this all the time on our podcast, but it's interesting kind of being a guest on someone else's podcast. So thank you.
Well,
This was great.
here's the final question. How do you start or find a group if you're interested?
Wow. I think I'm going to jump onto my computer for a second.
I will say you touched on one of the ways, especially if you're younger, a lot of schools have groups now. One of the things that we've talked about on the podcast is the prevalence of D&D in pop culture, especially recently. And I think Stranger Things, the TV show, is a lot of why the resurgence has happened.
Okay.
It's very, it's a focus in that show. And it's sort of when people really got back into it. And when I think, our next door neighbor who's in their high school club mentioned that because of Stranger Things, all these people showed up for the D&D club.
Oh, wow.
So I think for school-aged kids, school is a good place to do it. Andrew, I think, has discovered whatever he was looking for, so I've killed enough time.
No, there's a couple things online, but there are numerous ways to get involved in a game. So thanks to COVID, there was a lot of tools that were created that you could play a game online with others. But places to look are your local game store.
Okay.
So if you have a local game store, a lot of the times they run games there for beginners and things like that. Facebook, there are tons of groups, local groups online.
Oh.
There's numerous New Jersey, since we're based in New Jersey, there are numerous New Jersey groups. There's Northern New Jersey, Southern New Jersey, the mythical Central New Jersey, D&D groups. So there's all sorts of D&D. There's Bergen County D&D. There's
wow.
you can find local groups of people that are always looking to add somebody to a table.
Okay.
So there's always people saying, hey, we're looking for another player. We're playing X night. And the one thing I will highly recommend is try out different DMs. Because again, you may not always click with a group. So don't feel like if you tried it once,
right,
and didn't click with the group, don't give up, because it's just different DMs have different styles, and obviously it's like finding a group of friends. So be open-minded to giving it some time to find it out. But there is dndbeyond.com, which is the online version of all the rule books. You can download the free rule book, the basic rules. So if you want to start reading about it, you can go there. But yeah, you can find games almost anywhere.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to close out with something from the Message, Paul's letter to the Romans in the 12th chapter. He says, don't burn out. Keep yourselves fueled and of a flame. Be alert, servants of God, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Help needy Christians and be inventive in hospitality. That sounds like a lot of what we've talked about tonight. And I, again, am so grateful. Thank you so much for being on Will You Walk With Me? And for everyone else out there, my prayers go with you until we meet again. Invest in yourself. Take time to be with the Lord and see where God leads you. You are worth it. I'm inviting you to walk with me on this journey again at our next meeting, a journey to know the life-giving, restoring power of God. And I am always honored to walk with you. I hope that you will join me in our next episode, and I want to be sure that you know that if you are in need of professional help, which we all treasure in our journey, and you don't know what to do, you can contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's accessible by calling 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. Or there's a 3-digit code 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, designed to be a memorable and quick number that connects people who are in any other mental health crisis to a trained professional. If you would like to reach out to us, please send us a note at podcast@willyouwalkwithme.com. And again, thank you, Andrew and Catherine, and to all of you for listening. I pray for each of you that you see the hand of Jesus extended, knowing you are a child of God. Grab onto that hand. Be transformed, be creative, and know that in the process, you have a blessed partner for the journey forward. We'll see you soon. Bye.